Shalom, shalom, King. Shalom. All praises to the Most High God. Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shah. All right. Let me make sure real quick. King. Okay, all praises. All praises. All right, this is on Law School. Law School Genesis chapter 26. I believe that's where I left off. First and foremost, I'm going to give all honor and glory to the Most High God, Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shah. All right, let me go in here real quick. Share my screen. Yep. All right. All right, let me open up the Bible. All right, so yeah, like I said, this is Genesis Law School chapter 26. All right. A brief refresher. All right, Genesis chapter 25 is dealing with the birth of Esau, Jacob and Esau. All right. So here in Genesis 26, it gives later in Genesis 25, it gives the generations of Ishmael. Abraham had several sons. We talked about that. Uh Ishmael being one of them. All right. But he left all that he had to Isaac, that he said. It said, as far as the blessings and everything like that that pertain to the Most High God. All right, so we're gonna go to Genesis chapter 26, and we're gonna start at verse 1. All praises. All right, so it says, and there was a famine in the land. All right. It says, beside the first famine that was in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went unto Abimelech, king of the Philistines, unto Gerar. All right. So Isaac is he's got his wife, all right, Rebecca, and he's trying to seek succor. All right. He's trying to seek somewhere to get some food, make sure that he can take care and sustain his family. All right. So it says he went to Abimelech, king of the Philistines, unto Gerar. It says, and the Lord appeared unto him and said, go not down into Egypt, dwell in the land which I shall tell thee of. All right. So this is a case where Isaac's mind told him how to solve an issue, where to go, how to look to take care of his family. The Lord appeared unto him and said, go not down unto Egypt, dwell in the land which I shall tell thee of. All right, it says, sojourn in this land, and I will be with thee, and I will bless thee. For unto thee and unto thy seed I will give all these countries, and I will perform the oath which I swear unto Abraham thy father. So he said, look, don't go to Egypt, stay here. All right. I know it looked like there's no way you can make it here, but stay here. All right, let's keep going. It says, verse 4, and I will make thy seed to multiply as the stars of heaven, and will give unto thy seed all these countries, and in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. But that's the same promise that he made to Abraham, right? It says, because that Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. So what you do as a parent can have a direct correlation on what happens to your children. All right. What you do as a parent can have a direct correlation on what happens to your children. All right, let's open up another Bible real quick. Let's go to the book of Exodus. Exodus chapter 20. And we're gonna start at verse 1. All right, this is what the Ten Commandments are. It says, and Yahweh spake all these words, saying, I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them, for I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God. He's a jealous power, right? No other gods, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. So both sides of the coin are true, dealing with the Most High God, Yahweh, right? He can either extend judgment to you and your seed, or he can extend mercy to you and your seed. All right, whichever one you choose. Like Moses told us, choose you life or death. All right, so let's go back. All right, verse 5, it says, because that Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. Right, let me get another precept. Let's go to the book of Sirach. Let me open up another sword. I need one with the Apocrypha. All right, let's go to the book of Sirach, chapter 44. Sirach 44, and let's start at verse 19. All right, it says, mm, yeah, let's start at 19. It says, Abraham was a great father of many people, and glory was there none like unto him. I was talking to my real about this the other day, that the fact that a lot of our forefathers, they Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, they dwelt in tents, right? They lived in a tent for the majority of their lives, right? I want to say that Jacob lived in a tent his whole life, except the time he was living with Laban. That's neither here or there. The point that I'm trying to make is that it wasn't out of necessity that they lived that way. All right, we got these houses and stuff like this now, but we also got to know how to be a based, right? Abraham had so much substance that him and his cousin Lot had to go their separate ways. Right, we went over that in law school a while ago, right, where we dealt with Lot in Genesis. I want to say it's 18 or 19, where the men of Sodom was trying to break into Lot's house. Now we know that Lot had a house, so it wasn't like that they didn't know how to build houses or anything like that. They knew how to build houses. All right, we even have in our laws that if you build a house, you have to have a battlement around your house, right? Meet, which is like a gate almost on the roof of your house to prevent people from falling off the house. So we knew how to build houses. It's just that Abraham didn't live in a house, right? Why? Because Abraham was a pilgrim on the earth, right? Let me hold this real quick and let me go to Hebrews. Abraham was a pilgrim on the earth, just like Isaac, just like Jacob. All right. Most of our forefathers, Yahweh Shai, even. All right. Let's go to Hebrews 11. Hebrews 11 and all right, I'm going to start at verse 13. It says, these all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off and were persuaded of them. So all our forefathers and foremothers died in faith. All right. It says, not having received the promises, but seeing it afar off. Looking into the scriptures, we can see what's to come afar off. It says, being and were persuaded of them and embraced them and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. So a lot of us, you watching this, you might be a pilgrim on the earth. I've been a pilgrim for some time, right? It's a humbling experience, right? To go, not that we want to be from house to house like the scriptures say, but to have a mindset, at least, if anything, in the spirit of a pilgrim, knowing that this America is not this ain't it, right? we're looking for a country. We're looking for the great city, right? Which is going to be the kingdom, right? It says, and confess that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth, for that they seek for they that seek such things declare plainly that they seek a country, not this country, right? Not this country, but we seeking the kingdom, right? Salakia. It says, and truly, if they had been mindful of that country from whence they came out, they might have had opportunity. They might have had opportunity to have returned, but now they desire a better country, that is, an heavenly, a kingdom. It says, wherefore Yahweh is not ashamed to be called their God. Right now, we profane the Most High's name. That's why He won't even give us His real name. Right? He said, "Look, all y'all need to know is that I exist." Right? Yahweh, I exist. That's enough for y'all. If y'all should make it to the kingdom, if we make it to the kingdom, Lord willing, we'll get a better relationship with the Most High. It says, "For He hath prepared for them a city." All right, so Abraham dwelt in a tent a lot of the times in his life, and it wasn't because he didn't have money, right? In Sirach 44:19, it says Abraham was a great father of many people. In glory was there none like unto him. Abraham was straight, right? He had plenty of sheep, oxen, I mean, servants. I think when they kidnapped his cousin, he took 300 armed trained men to go get Lot back. He had plenty of people working for him, right? To work, put people to work for you, you got to pay them. It says, verse 20, who kept the law of the Most High and was in covenant with him. He established the covenant in his flesh, meaning he circumcised himself. And when he was proved, he was found faithful. All right. Therefore, he assured him by an oath that he would bless the nations in his seed. So not every we went over this a few times. Abraham had several children, but the lineage and the blessing was going to go through from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob, right? Let me get that in. Let's go to Genesis chapter 25 real quick. Let's get that. Genesis 25 and verse. I'm gonna read verse 5 to get to the point. It says, and Abraham gave. So here up above, from verse 1 to 4 is naming all the children that Abraham had after his wife passed. Right? Verse 5 says, and Abraham gave all that he had unto Isaac. Right? But unto the sons of the concubines which Abraham had, Abraham gave gifts and sent them away from Isaac his son while he yet lived eastward unto the east country. Right? So he gave, I mean, every father's gonna give his child something, but the blessing went to Isaac. All right. So let's go back to Sirach. All right. In verse 21 again. It says, therefore, he assured him by an oath that he would bless the nations in his seed, and that he would multiply him as the dust of the earth, and exalt his seed as the stars, and cause them to inherit from sea to sea, and from the river unto the utmost part of the land. With Isaac did he establish likewise for Abraham, his father's sake, the blessing of all men. So the covenant and the blessing went from Abraham to Isaac. It says, and made it rest upon the head of Jacob. He acknowledged him in his blessing and gave him inheritance and divided his portions among the 12 tribes. Did he part them? All right. So understand that when it's talking about all nations being blessed through Abraham, it's chiefly talking about the seed of Israel. Right. So let's go back to Genesis chapter 26. All right, we were left off on verse 5. So let's read 6. It says, and Isaac dwelt in Gerar, and the men of the place asked him of his wife. And he said, she is my sister. For he feared to say, she is my wife. Lest, said he, lest, said he, the men of the place should kill me for Rebekah, because she was fair to look upon. So Rebekah was a beautiful sister. He said, look, this is my sister, not my wife, because they understood that if she was married to him, that they couldn't have her, because that would be adultery, right? Verse 8, it says, and it came to pass when he had been there a long time that Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked out at a window and saw, and behold, Isaac was sporting with Rebekah, his wife. So Abimelech looked out the window and kind of seen Isaac flirting with his wife, playing with her, you know what I'm saying? How you do with your spouse. It was obvious whatever they was doing that wasn't his sister, right? He was sporting with her. That's what that means. Verse 9. And Abimelech called Isaac and said, behold, of a surety she is thy wife. So whatever he might have been grabbing on, with a husband and wife stuff, right? He said, look, for sure, that's not your sister, bro. What I seen y'all doing, that's your wife, right? And how sayest thou, she is my sister? And Isaac said unto him, because I said, lest I die for her. He like, look, I said that because I ain't want to die over. Hey, take it how you want. That's what he said. Abraham said it too. She ain't worth dying for. I'm just playing. But that's what he said though, right? He was like, look, I said she was my sister because I didn't want to die over her. Take it how you want. That's what it say. Verse 10, it say, and Abimelech said, what is this thou hast done unto us? One of the people might lightly have lying with thy wife. Somebody could have smashed your wife, bruh. And thou shouldest have brought guiltiness upon us. And Abimelech charged all his people, saying, he that toucheth this man or his wife shall surely be put to death. And then Isaac sold in that land and received in the same year an hundredfold. And the Lord blessed him. So this is where it get real spiritual, right? When it's talking about him sowing in the land, is multifold. It's, yeah, he might have been planting crops, but he was literally teaching the Bible, right? I'm gonna show you that, Lord willing. So it says, and he sold in that land, because the law has always been taught. It didn't just start being taught after Salakia. It didn't just start being taught after we got our slave ships, or in this country now that we await, right? It didn't start just it's always been being taught since the beginning of time, since you had Adam on the earth, the chosen Adam, right? It said he sold in that land and received in the same year in hundredfold. So Isaac was teaching the Bible, teaching the laws, and the Lord blessed him. It says, and the man waxed great and went forward and grew until he became very great. For he had possessions of flocks and possessions of herds and great store of servants. And the Philistines envy him, right? Why they envying him? Let's see. It says, for all the wells which his father's servants had digged in the days of Abraham, his father, the Philistines had stopped them and filled them with earth. All right. So this is where you gotta understand. Keep in mind that it's a famine in the land. In a famine, in a literal famine, right? There's a lack of food and water. So why would the Philistines, if this was literally talking about him going and planting and stuff like this, it says, for all the wells which his father's servants had digged in the days of Abraham his father, the Philistines had stopped them and filled them with earth. That's talking about the laws. They stopped the Bible. They stopped the Bible and the laws of God from being taught in that area. Right? I'm gonna show you that. It says, and Abimelech said unto Isaac, go from us, for thou art much mightier than we. Right? They said, go from us because you're way mightier than we are. Right? It says, verse 18, it says, and Isaac digged again the wells of water which they had digged in the days of Abraham his father. For the Philistines had stopped them after the death of Abraham, and he called their names after the names by which his father had called them. Right? They stopped up the waters. Let's go to Proverbs. Proverbs chapter 10 and verse 11. Proverbs chapter 10 and verse 11. All right, it says, the mouth of a righteous man is a what? Is a well of life, but violence covereth the mouth of the wicked. Right? So the mouth of a righteous man is a well of life. All right, let's go to John. So yeah, it was probably a literal well right there, but it's talking about the laws being taught. When you got a man that's following the Bible, his mouth is gonna what speak the law. Let's go to John 4. Yahweh Shah said the same thing. John 4, and I'm gonna start at verse. Matter of fact, let me read 19. Let's go back to Genesis. Then we'll get that. All right, let's read 18 again. Genesis 26 and 18. It says, and Isaac digged again the wells of water, which they had digged in the days of Abraham his father, for the Philistines had stopped them after the death of Abraham. And he called their names after the names by which his father had called them. And Isaac's servants digged in the valley and found there a well of springing water, right? A well of springing water. Let's go to John now. They teaching the Bible in the valley. All right, John 4, and let's start at verse 5. It says, then cometh he to a city of Samaria, which is called Sychar, near to the parcel of ground that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Now Jacob's well was there. All right, Jacob's well was there. Yahushua, therefore, being weary with his journey, sat thus on the well, and it was about the sixth hour. There cometh a woman of Samaria to draw water. Yahushua saith unto her, give me to drink. See, all this is spiritual. Yeah, it's a well right there, right? But this is deeper than just this woman being thirsty, right? She's spiritually thirsty, right? The same way that the people in the land of the Philistines were spiritually thirsty, right? They because the Philistines stopped up the wells, they stopped the water up. They stopped the teachings of God up, right? For his disciples were gone away into a city to buy meat, right? That's heavy. We'll keep going though. Verse 9. Then saith the woman of Samaria unto him, how is it that thou, being a Jew, askest me drink of me, which am a woman of Samaria? For the Jews have no dealings with the Samaritans. Yahweh answered and said unto her, if thou knewest the gift of God, and who is it that saith to thee, give me to drink, thou wouldst have asked of him, and he would have given thee living water, right? The woman, so he said, look, I'm not talking about water. Can he Yahweh Shai is telling this woman, can you tell me anything about the laws? She thinking it's just talking about literal water. It's going over her head like it would go over a lot of our heads, right? When I first read Genesis 26, I was like, dang, why they stopping up the wells? But that ain't what it's talking about. He said, you would have asked of me, and he would have given thee living water. It says, the woman saith unto him, sir, thou hast nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. From whence then hast thou that living water? Art thou greater than our father Jacob, which gave us the well and drank thereof himself and his children and his cattle? Yahweh answered and said unto her, whosoever drinketh of this water shall thirst again. But whosoever drinketh of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst. But the water that I shall give him shall be in him a well of water springing up to everlasting life, right? Springing up to everlasting life. So let's go back to Genesis 26. It said the same thing about Isaac. Verse 19. And Isaac's servants digged in the valley and found there a well of springing water. Right? They got clear understanding of the word and they started to teach it. It says, verse 20, and the herdmen of Gerar did strive with Isaac's herdmen, saying, the water is ours. And he called the name of the well Essek because they strove with him. Right? So they stroving over this water, right? Let's go to Proverbs. Proverbs 18. Proverbs 18 and verse number 6. What did that say? It say, a fool's lips enter into contention, and his mouth calleth for strokes. Right. So this is why they stroving over the water, right? Because you're dealing with the Philistines, the Hamites. The Hamites want to serve a million different gods. That's like the Egyptians, same people. They had over 300 gods that they worship. Right. This is why they stroving over the water. Right. Let's go. So let's go to verse 4. All right. It says, the words of a man's mouth are as deep waters, and the wellspring of wisdom as a flowing brook. So it's comparing wisdom to a flowing brook and a wellspring. All right, this is all talking about the laws being taught and the nations being mad that the laws are being taught. That's always how it's going to be. All right, the nations are never going to be happy that the laws are being taught. Keep in mind, these are the Philistines we dealing with right here. All right, let's go to the book of Zechariah. Hamites, right? Zechariah chapter 13 and is it 13 I want? Let me see. 14. Yep. Zechariah chapter 14 and verse 16. All right. It says, and it shall come to pass that, so this is going into the kingdom, all right, after the destruction that's near to come. It says, and it shall come to pass that everyone that is left of all the nations which came against Jerusalem shall even go up from year to year to worship the king. So yes, the nations will be in the kingdom. All right, let's make that clear. They will be in the kingdom, but there's a order that is going to be in the kingdom. They won't be kings in the kingdom, right? It says the Lord of hosts, they're going to come to worship the king, right? The Lord of hosts, and to keep the feast of tabernacles. They're going to be have to do it, right? Verse 17 is foreshadowing. It says, and it shall be that whoso will not come. So why does the Lord why does he put on the spirit of Zechariah to say, and whoso will not come? I thought everybody they was just gonna be obedient and want to serve and want to cleave on the us. No, because they're not gonna do that. We're gonna have to make them do it, right? It says, and whoso will not come up of all the families of the earth unto Jerusalem to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, even upon them shall be no rain, right? So no literal rain, or like no laws being taught to them, no wisdom, no understanding. Right? It says, and if the family of Egypt go not up and come not that have no rain, right? So nobody, like the Lord said, don't cast your pearls to swine. So you don't want to learn the laws? Okay, cool. We're not gonna keep trying to make you learn them. What's gonna happen? It says, there shall be the plague wherewith the Lord will smite the heathen that come not up to the feast of tabernacles, meaning what? He gonna kill them, right? This shall be the punishment of Egypt and the punishment of all nations that come not up to keep the feast of tabernacles. All right, so they're gonna have to be made to do it, right? This is why they striving or fighting with the herdmen of Isaac. All right, in Genesis chapter 26 and verse 20, it says, and the herdmen of Gerar did strive with Isaac's herdmen, saying, the water is ours. And so keep in mind, said that put earth in the wells that Abraham had dig. Now they saying that the water is this, so it ain't talking about no literal water. It's talking about they fighting over what kind of doctrine is going to be taught in this land, right? It says because they strove with him. It says, and he called the name of the well Esek because they strove with him. It says, and they digged another well and strove for that also. And he called the name of it Sitna. So they keep on digging these wells. They keep on pushing the word. Okay, y'all don't want us to teach over here. We're gonna teach over here. We're gonna teach over here. And as people is converting to trying to convert to the laws, they going and creating confusion, right? Let's go to Proverbs chapter 20 real quick. Proverbs 20 and verse 5. Proverbs 20 and verse 5. It says, the counsel in the heart of a man is like deep water, but a man of understanding will draw it out, right? So this is going into also what was going on at the well with the woman from Samaria and Yahweh Shah, right? She says, thou has nothing to draw the water out. And the water and the well is wet, the well is deep. Let's go back and get that. John 4. All praises to the most high, man. Uh John 4. Yeah, verse 11. It says, the woman said unto him, sir, thou hast nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. From whence then hast thou that living water? Right. So what did Proverbs just say? Solomon was putting us on, right? It says the counsel in the heart of a man is like deep water, right? So the counsel in the heart of a man is just like a well, right? It says, but a man of understanding will draw it out, right? You will have something to draw with, right? You will know how to use this word, right? So let's go back to Genesis 26. All right, we almost done. In verse, let's see, did I get? Let me matter of fact, let me go to Proverbs 18 real quick. Yeah, I got it. I got it. All right, Genesis 26 and verse 21 again. It says, and they digged another well and strove for that also. And he called the name of it Sitna. And he removed from thence and digged another well, for that they strove not. And he called the name of it Rehoboth. And he said, for now the Lord have made room for us, and he shall be fruitful in the land. Right. So this is let you know the Lord is this is talking and going into the Isaac was out here teaching the Bible. He was out here teaching the laws of the Lord in this land. Right. That's why I say, for now the Lord have made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land. It says, and he went up from thence to Beersheba. It says, and he went up from thence to Beersheba, and the Lord appeared unto him in the same night and said, I am the God of Abraham thy father. Fear not, for I am with thee, and I will bless thee and multiply thy seed for my servant Abraham's sake. And he builded an altar and called upon the name of the Lord and pitched his tent there. And there Isaac's servants digged the well. So they ain't just digging up these wells for literal water all over the place. They teaching the Bible, right? It says, then Abimelech went to him from Gerar, and Ahuzah, one of his friends, and Phicol, the chief captain of his army. And Isaac said unto them, from wherefore come ye to me, seeing ye hate me and have sent me away from you? So he like, look, why y'all coming over here bothering me, right? Let's go real quick to Baruch. He like, what's wrong with y'all, man? Let's go to Baruch, uh, chapter 3. Why is y'all coming over here, seeing that y'all hate the word? Y'all don't love y'all don't want to hear this Bible. That's all I'm pushing. Thus saith the Lord. All right, Baruch 3, and let's start at verse 10. It says, how happeneth it, Israel, that thou art in thine enemy's land, that thou art waxen old in a strange country, that thou art defiled with the dead, that thou art counted with them that go down into the graves. Thou hast forsaken the fountain of wisdom. So here's comparing wisdom again to a fountain, right? To water, right? Going into us being captive in our enemy's land. This is what it's like when we in our enemy's land. It's like dry. You will die of thirst in your enemy's land, right? Verse 13 says, for if thou hadst walked in the way of Yahweh, thou shouldest have dwelt in peace forever. All right. So this is why Isaac is digging all these wells over here, right? Because he in the enemy's land. All right, let's keep going in Genesis. It says in Genesis 26, where I was at, verse 28. It says, and they said, it said, and they said, we saw certainly that the Lord was with thee, and we said, let there be now an oath betwixt us, even betwixt us and thee, and let us make a covenant with thee. So they see that the Most High is behind Isaac and everything that he's doing. It says that thou will not do us no hurt, as we have not touched thee, and as we have done unto thee nothing but good, and have sent thee away in peace. Thou art now the blessed of the Lord. All right. So they like, look, we don't want no problems with you. Right. What the Lord say, touch not my anointed ones and do my prophets no harm. All right. It says, and he made them a feast, and they did eat and drink. And they rose up betimes in the morning and swear one to another. And Isaac sent them away, and they departed from him in peace. And it came to pass the same day that Isaac's servants came and told him concerning the well which they had digged, and said unto him, we have found water, right? We got understanding. The Lord done dropped something else on us, some more understanding, right? Verse 33, and he called it Sheba. Therefore, the name of the city is Beersheba unto this day. And Esau was 40 years old when he took to wife Judith, the daughter of Beri the Hittite, and Bashemath, the daughter of Elon the Hittite, which were a grief of mine unto Isaac and to Rebekah. Right. So that's how that chapter ends. Esau marrying the Hamites, right? And that's a grief of mine to Isaac and Rebekah. They do not like that at all. All right. So all praises to the Most High. Most High willing, you got something out of it. All right. All praises to the Most High God. Lord willing, we'll see you soon for chapter 27 of Law School, where we get into Jacob getting the blessing. All right. This is a very interesting chapter as well. So, Lord's willing, we'll be on here soon for that. All right. It's Brother Nashan, New Wine Congregation of Israel. Shalom, y'all.